Morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for this series, first in a series of weekly press conferences on election preparations. We're going to be offering this weekly opportunity not only for you to get the most current information and maybe even breaking news directly from me, but also we're hoping that you'll help us dispel any confusion or disinformation out there and help provide accurate information through the November 3rd election and beyond. And Wanda, let's not call that a few weeks. It's still a full month and a couple of days away. So, so let me say first of all that I have great confidence and pride in the preparations and professionalism of our county election offices, who have been preparing for this election all year, but well before that, and are doing tremendous work processing voter registration, mail-in applications, getting their ballots in the mail, opening satellite county election offices, expanding voter education, conducting poll worker training, programming voting systems, performing testing on the systems, and countless other preparations for in-person and by mail election day voting. So I'll start with the latest numbers. Total voter registration in the state right now is 8,854,000 voters. Of that, 4,156,000 are Democratic registrations, 3,435,000 are Republicans. By the way, I'm not giving exact figures, so if you want exact, we will provide those separately, but these are approximate. No affiliations or independents are 863,000, and other registrations are 397,000. So far to date, the total number of approved mail-in and absentee applications statewide are a little over 2.3 million approved absentee and mail-in applications. And the total number of ballots that are already in the process of being mailed or have been mailed are almost 1.9 million. So of that 2.3, almost 1.9 million have already been mailed or in the process of being mailed. So the counties did a great job about getting these in the mail really immediately following the Supreme Court's decision, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court's decision, allowing us to certify the ballots. I also want to add that last week we sent out, some of you may know, we annually send out what are called EBU mailers, which are mail to eligible but unregistered mail, to unregistered Pennsylvanians. So we sent over 2 million postcards to Pennsylvanians who are eligible to vote but are unregistered. So those went out between September 21st and September 25th. Okay, so other current events. Let's start with yesterday, especially since there was some disinformation that was put out last night. So Philadelphia, happy to say that Philadelphia opened 7 satellite county election offices yesterday. They're hoping to open another 10 in the next couple of weeks, but started with the first 7. And as you may know, the president alleged that poll watchers were wrongfully kept out of these satellite offices. This is completely inaccurate, and if you haven't read the Philadelphia Inquirer's article, they did a great job yesterday. First of all, there are no poll watchers yet. Those are officially appointed just usually a few days before Election Day, and they literally don't exist now. Second, they don't have any right to be present in county election offices. Once appointed, poll watchers and party representatives have certain specified rights in the polling places on Election Day, as well as certain rights around the count. And as Al Schmidt, city commissioner in Philadelphia, said very well, poll watchers have no rights to come into our house and sit with us at our kitchen table when we vote, nor do they have the ability to go into the county election offices to watch people vote. That you can do in your privacy on your time. Okay, second thing I want to talk about is Luzerne County. Hopefully most of you saw the press statement that they put out. I think that was late last week, So I just want to say, you know, what happened in Luzerne County is an example of how it should work when mistakes are made. So as many of you know, in Luzerne County, there was a temporary worker who was hired for the mailroom. Clearly wasn't sufficiently trained, and so what happened was there were ballots that were sent from remote areas of the globe. So they were remote overseas ballots that looked different than traditional ballots, and this temporary worker was not trained and threw out some ballots. Luckily, it was caught immediately by the county election director, who immediately reported it. But within a couple of days, it was reported, it was being investigated, and that temporary worker was terminated. Not only that, but Luzerne County has reached out to us at the Department of State for additional training to make sure it never happens again. So it was bad that it happened, but they immediately dealt with it and have moved forward in all the right ways. So that should make everyone have confidence that counties, when they recognize something went wrong, to act with that kind of promptness and comprehensiveness is exactly what you want. So kudos to them for making sure that it will never happen again. Okay, another thing that has been an issue the last couple of days. So some of you know that there have been some service interruptions for Pennsylvania voter services for our online voter registration. And so just so you know, in the last week or so, the Shore system has been up 98% of the time, so that's been working well. Pennsylvania Voter Services has had some issues and has been up about 94% of the time with intermittent connectivity, especially the last couple of days. The issues the last couple of days did not relate to the opening of Philly's county election offices. So I think we got that question from somebody, and I just want to make it clear that was not in any way a cause. It seems that some of the cause of the problems yesterday actually was due to a job that was being run for overseas and military voters. So, you know, obviously that interfered with connectivity for some period in Philly's and other counties' offices, but it was about half an hour to an hour. As soon as it was caught, it was resolved. So in the meantime, because of the other, intermittent issues, OIT, the Office of Information Technology, support staff, our contractors and vendors are actively engaged in troubleshooting activities, continuously monitoring the websites, and are looking at every effort to improve service and address the cause of the intermittent service issues. A number of capacity increases have been already implemented just within the last week, and you know, we will continue to do more. While the exact cause is not yet known, my understanding, I tried on several different sites this morning, and it worked fine. While the exact cause of these issues is not yet known, there is no evidence present at this time to suggest any malicious activity. So that is not indicated. We will continue, of course, to keep investigating. What else? Naked ballots. I'm happy to say, since other people seem to be taking up the naked advertising, I am going to continue to do clothed advertising. We want ballots to be clothed. It's been really great to see how many folks are already publicizing the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania's decision that ballots that don't have their inner secrecy envelope cannot be counted. And so we are going to be doing our own, very extensive public education campaign through our website, social media, press releases, emails, direct mail, paid media as well, to make sure that every voter knows that they need to both seal their ballot in the inner secrecy envelope, put it in the outer envelope, sign the outer envelope, and make sure that that's all complete. And also that voters need to return their own ballots, and voters can't return ballots for other individuals unless they're a voter with a disability that has appointed an agent, and this is a signed form that can be pulled off of our website. We welcome your help, and luckily, again, there's a lot of creative people already getting in the mix to give all kinds of ways for people to understand that this is a requirement for the vote to count. And I have to say, it's already been working. I mean, I've been on a couple of teletown halls where voters are already getting the message, which is terrific, but we need to make sure we reach everybody. So now that the ballots are being printed and mailed, I want to remind everybody that there's now 3 ways to vote for all Pennsylvanians. Obviously, the one that's most well known is you could vote in person on November 3rd. Polls are just like always going to be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. And the consolidations of polling places that we saw in the primary will not be present in November. Counties are expecting to open the normal amount or close to the normal amount of their polling places. And though they may not be the same polling places as usual, because if there's a healthcare facility or a senior facility that needs to remain closed or more protective due to COVID-19, it may be in a different place, but there will be places throughout the counties in people's communities. So I want to reassure everybody about that. And there will also be safe, secure polling places. So Department of State is providing in partnership with PEMA and lots of really generous businesses who have donated a lot of materials. We're providing masks, gloves, hand sanitizer, face shields, the plastic dividers that are called sneeze guards, tape to mark social distancing, disinfectant spray for the tables and systems and materials. So it will be very safe. Wear a mask, wash your hands before and after, treat it like you would going anywhere, stay safe. So that's the first way to vote. Second way to vote is you can vote by mail, and I urge for anybody who hasn't already to apply for their ballot today. You can go into votespa.com, very easy to do online. You can also do it by mail or in person, but apply today. And the third way you can vote, and this is how I plan to vote this year, is to vote in person early at your county election office. So you need to make sure that your county has already printed their ballots. So I'm going to call my county election office next week, make sure that they've printed their ballots. I'm going to find out what hours, what offices they have, because many counties now have more than one county election office. I'm going to go in person, apply for my ballot. They'll check my eligibility while I'm there. And if they determine me eligible, they'll hand me my ballot, show me where I could fill it out. And then after I vote, I'll put it in a secrecy envelope and in the outer envelope, and I'll cast it all in one visit. So all in one visit, voters can vote early at any time between, as soon as their ballots are printed by their county election offices and October 27th, which is the final deadline for applying for your mail-in ballot. So all of these are great options, and we ask for your help in making sure that voters know of all these choices, and to make sure that every Pennsylvanian can safely exercise their right to vote in a safe, secure manner during the COVID-19 emergency. And I'll also remind everybody the deadline to register to vote is October 19th, so we have about 3 weeks for that. Again, they can do it online or by mail or in person. And of course, the deadline to apply for mail ballot is October 27th, but don't wait, do it now. And please encourage everybody to check before they retweet. There's so much disinformation out there. Any help you could be at directing people to votespa.com and other trusted sources and not trusting what they see on Twitter would be great. So thank you all again for being here, and I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, we're going to start with Marley Parrish from the Center Daily Times, and we'll have John Finnerty from CNHI on deck. Go ahead, Marley.
Thank you. I just had 2 questions specifically about the drop boxes. There's obviously been some controversy surrounding them since they were used in some counties in the June primary. But Center County specifically plans to use 8 drop boxes in the upcoming election. They only used 1 in June. and had experienced no issues with that one. And just to reiterate, why do you have confidence in drop boxes in mail-in or absentee voting?
Sure. So I'll start with the latter because it's a bigger picture question, and then get to the drop boxes. So everyone should understand that absentee voting has been in existence in Pennsylvania for decades, and mail-in voting is subject to the same procedures for eligibility checking and all the safety and security of that process as Pennsylvanians have been enjoying for decades. So it starts with, so I want to be clear because there does seem to be confusion in the media and social media about this. So in Pennsylvania, we don't mail ballots to everyone. You have to apply. And so that process of applications adds so much security and integrity to the process, because when I go on to apply for a mail-in ballot or an absentee ballot, I have to give either my driver's license number or my social security last 4 digits. And before I ever get a ballot, they're going to check me against either that PennDOT database or the social security database and against the voter record, right? So they are checking to make sure that I am who I say I am, that I'm eligible to vote, and before they even send me a ballot. They send me a ballot, I fill it out, I sign the declaration saying that, that I am providing this information, I am casting this vote. And when the county gets the ballot, again, they're comparing it, they're looking at, make sure that I'm eligible to vote and that I applied for that ballot before they even count the ballot. And there's a public process, so there's, representatives of parties and candidates are allowed to be present while the ballots are being canvassed. So there's systems on both sides, that check the eligibility, make sure that we have security in the process. In some ways, it's even more extensive, those secure practices, than there are just for regular voting. So I have a lot of confidence, and counties take it very seriously. As for drop boxes, we put out guidance to the counties. As you know, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court has specifically ruled that drop boxes are in fact authorized, as are multiple county election offices. And this is something that has been used in other states around the country for years, if not decades. And they're very similar in many ways to mailboxes, except they're even better because once delivered into a box, it's cast, right? So you don't have to worry about mail delays because it's actually the county designated officials who are picking up. So counties have to have secure processes. They have to have chain of custody procedures to make sure that the box, the box itself is very secure. They're weatherproof and, disaster proof and so forth. And then the counties have to have chain of custody procedures for picking up the ballots and, tracking the ballots. So it's very secure and safe, and it's a great way. The counties that used them in the primary really, really appreciated the process because it not only gives them confidence that the ballots will be cast on time, but it gives the voters confidence that when they cast their ballot, it will be counted and picked up and received immediately. So it's good for everybody.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, we'll go with John Finnerty from CNHI, and next up will be Teresa Bakel from the York Daily Record. Hang on 1 minute while I find John here in my list.
I'm here.
Okay, go ahead, John.
Okay. Yeah, Secretary, I guess one thing I'd wondered about was, do you have any sense in terms of, because there's this concern about the late arriving ballots and the fact that there could be this flood of late arriving mail ballots, do we have a sense that the number of people applying for mail-in ballots is kind of slowed, that the people, everyone who wants them has got them, or do you have a sense that they're just accelerating at this point? And then I guess the other question, I keep getting confusing answers on why wasn't naked ballots an issue in the primary? Can you explain sort of how it was dealt with in the primary?
Sure.
How widespread the problem was in the primary? Do we have any sense of how many ballots were naked in the primary?
So for the first question, when you're talking about late arriving, you're talking about like the fact that the Supreme Court granted our request to have ballots received by November 6th,
Right.
as long as they're, okay. So, yeah, I think when you look at historic numbers of when ballots arrive. So, for example, in the primary, there were nearly 1.5 million ballots cast successfully. Only of those 1.45 or 6, so of those close to 1.5 million, only 60,000 ballots arrived in the first 3 days following the election. So not that that's not a large number, but in context, it's not a large number. So the overwhelming majority of ballots tend to arrive in the last week before the deadline. And I don't expect that to change. And frankly, our messaging to voters is not changing. They still have to cast their ballot by November 3rd. And yes, if they stick it in the mailbox on November 3rd, it will be counted as long as it's arrived by November 6th, but they cast their ballot by November 3rd. So, and even that 60,000 in the primary, that the ballots got in the mail to the voters much later. So to get to the sort of part B of your first question, the fact that the counties have sent out ballots so much earlier now than they did in the primary is hugely helpful, because a lot of counties weren't able to get their ballots in the mail until 2 to 3 weeks before the primary. And they got them in the mail 5 weeks before the primary in many cases. So 5 weeks before the general in this case. So that's a huge advance. In terms of the applications, so that kind of goes hand in hand with that. I think we'll still see, hundreds of thousands of applications come in, but already, close to 2 million have been put in the mail. So it's many fewer that the counties need to now keep up with, so we'll enable them to get them in the mail. And obviously they have to get them in the mail to voters now every 48, within 48 hours. So the whole shifting earlier is going to help tremendously. And honestly, I don't think that 3 days compared to the numbers that we'll get before November 3rd, I don't think that that's going to be a significant problem. And frankly, all of this is a balance, right? So you have the balance of the accessibility to the vote and making sure that those post office delays don't disenfranchise voters through no fault of their own, balance with the fact that we're hoping to have ballots counted, most importantly, accurately, but accurately as quickly as possible. And obviously, if the legislature would enact a law that would allow counties to start pre-canvassing those ballots earlier, it would make things a lot easier for everyone. Okay, that was your first part A and part B. Your second question, remind me what your second question was.
Yeah, it was why wasn't naked ballots a problem in the primary?
Oh, right. Okay, so basically the Pennsylvania Supreme Court was the first time that they established what the law was. It wasn't, naked ballots, it hasn't been clear in that that you couldn't count them prior to now, so it hasn't been something that's been tracked. So we don't really know how many people cast ballots that were not in the secrecy envelope, because it's not like naked ballots are in the statutes, right? The Pennsylvania Supreme Court decision was the first time that this was heard by a court establishing that they could not be counted. So now that this is clearly the law, obviously we have to implement the law, and so now we'll be able to have a real sense of what those numbers are. But previously they haven't been tracked because it wasn't established that you could ballots, if that makes sense. So stay tuned and we'll see, and again, so therefore there hasn't had to be massive public education around it, because there was no statutory or legal authority to say they won't be counted. Now there is. So now everybody and their brother are making sure that everybody they know knows. And, I can't believe how quickly people have acted. Twitter, of course, immediately blew up with all kinds of funny, naked ballot jingles and GIFs and ways for people to get the message out. But I've already been getting mail. It's been integrated into political mail already. So it's great. And I'm thankful for every message we can get out there that people need to include the inner envelope.
Thanks.
Okay, we're going to go to Teresa Bakel from the York Daily Record, and next up will be Jonathan Live from the Inquirer.
Good morning. My question today is, how are ballots being kept secure? They're going to start rolling in. How are elections offices going to keep them secure until election day when they're counted?
Yeah, I mean, again, and this is not new, right? They've been having ballots kept for, absentee ballots for decades. So there were requirements in the law, and the same requirements that have applied historically apply to mail-in ballots as well. They have to keep them locked. They have to track them. When they're received, they get entered. So it's why, we're able to update data to you all, regularly, is because the counties, when they receive them, they have to enter that data into SURE. So they're tracking them, and then they're storing them in a secure, locked place. So the combination of those things makes it very secure. And then, of course, the voters, if they've signed up for notifications, can get their notifications. If they haven't signed up, they can call and find out whether their ballot's been received. So all of that is very closely tracked and secure.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, we're going to go with Jonathan Live from the Inquirer, and Mark Levy, AP, will be up next.
Good morning. Just an easy question. Can I ask you to predict the future a little bit? Obviously, voting by mail does have higher rejection rates than voting in person. Traditionally, issues of missed deadlines, signature problems. Now we've got the so-called naked ballots. And that's especially true for voters who are new to voting by mail, right? Which is basically most of us in Pennsylvania. So at this point, what do you think will be the top reasons for rejecting ballots? And what kind of numbers are we looking at here? Out of the 3 million that you've estimated will be cast this election, how many do you expect will be rejected?
I am not sure I could answer that, Jonathan, though I'd really like to. I think, like you said, this is new, and a lot of these things are new. And I think, I'm not sure that I could predict that. I think we have some of the information from the primary, like we know how many ballots were received late. We know how many ballots were rejected for lack of signature, that kind of thing. So we could look at those and project out some, but something like naked ballots, both it not being an issue before because it wasn't clearly something you couldn't count, and take on the flip side the public education that we have around it. In addition to the public education around making sure you sign that declaration, I mean, it's just there's so many X factors. So I'm sorry, but I'm not sure that I can answer your question. I think it will be a huge learning experience and will help us in future elections, but there's too many new things, I think, to predict at this point. Sorry.
But could you put it in a little bit of context of, for example, are these kinds of rejections going to be a big enough reason that, for example, a candidate might lose an election off of these numbers? Right. I mean, that certainly happened in other places in the past.
Right. So it probably depends on the candidate, Jonathan, right? I mean, if you're talking about like a House district race, it's very different than obviously a statewide race. Do I think that they're going to be enough to change the course of the statewides? I don't, because I think everything is balanced by something else, right? So like naked ballots, might have will have more rejections, but the public education will help that, right? And then the 3-day, at least for this election, the 3-day receipt deadline extension of the ballots is going to counteract the mail delays, right? So you'd have to predict both the negative impact and the positive impact, and it's just a lot of variables, but I think lots of things impact the much smaller district races, and you could have those races could be decided by a handful of votes even without any of these new variables. So I'm happy to think about this some more, and we can but I think there's so many variables. You could look at some of the historical numbers. I think, Wanda, do I recall right that something like 17,000 ballots were rejected in the primary? Is that right?
Yeah, it was about 18,000, yes. 18,000.
So, again, Jonathan, so let's say you double that. Do I know whether any races are going to be at the statewide level? It's just too many variables. I apologize, but it's just not something that I can quantify at this point.
Okay, we're going to move on to Mark Levy with the AP, and then next up will be Andy Mahalchik with WBRE. Go ahead, Mark.
Hi, Secretary. Can you hear me?
Yes.
On the Luzerne County matter, you said election officials handled it properly. I'm wondering if you know why the ballots were tossed in the trash, how it was discovered, why some were resealed, and whether this is a criminal matter.
Well, it's been, as you know, it's been referred, it's being investigated by local, state, and federal authorities. So I think that's still in process. It sounds, though, from the initial investigation that it was an error by somebody. Again, these ballots, I don't think look like they were sent out in August. So it was before the ballots are even finalized. They're the federal, and is Jonathan on this? Maybe he can explain, but these are the ones that go to remote areas of the globe, and they're special write-in ballots, so they look different. Is Jonathan on? Does he have the ability to speak? Jonathan Marks, Wanda.
Am I unmuted now?
There you are.
Okay. Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah. So in some cases, based on what we've heard from the county, the voters who returned the ballots returned them in an envelope that didn't clearly indicate in some cases that there were balloting materials. We do provide, even for ballots that are sent to voters electronically, we provide an envelope template that clearly marks that there's a ballot enclosed. But in some cases, voters put that in another, outer package or another envelope, and it's not clear from looking at the outside of the envelope that there are balloting materials enclosed. So, for military and overseas voters, everything's a little bit different because ballots are delivered electronically. Ballots look different if they're sent out early because they're special write-in ballots. They're not the traditional optical scan or paper ballots that regular civilian voters would see. So it sounds like it was confusion. As the secretary said, we're working with the county to do additional training so that they know all the different things they might see coming in from overseas, from voters who are military and overseas civilians. But if one of those voters puts their balloting materials in an envelope that is not marked as including balloting materials, the county's not going to know that until they open it. And the key there is what you do after you realize that there are official balloting materials in there. And that's what needs to be tightened up in Luzerne County, as I understand it.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. We will move on to Andy Mahalchik now. He assures me that this is, in fact, Andy. He's using his alias today, but next up after Andy will be Emily Previty from WITF. Go ahead, Rich. I'm sorry, Andy.
Andy, thank you, Andy. This is Andy Mahalchik from WBRE TV. The name says Rich. That's my photographer's computer. Secretary, of course, the Luzerne County military ballot's a big issue, a big concern up here. A lot of questions. What can you say to reassure folks? Because County Council and others are saying that this should not have happened in the first place, and that the U.S. Attorney David Freed last week has sent a letter saying that a similar issue happened back in June. I know that's all part of the investigation, but there's still a lot of concern about the military ballots and mail-in ballots moving forward. What can you say to reassure those folks?
Yeah, and I saw that reference too. I don't know what that refers to. I'm not aware of any prior issue in June, so I'll just start with that, and that may be part of the investigation. Nothing has been reported to me from the elections office or the county executive or the county manager, I think is his title, about prior incidents. My understanding is this was limited to one temporary employee who clearly wasn't trained. So that's the key here, right? As Jonathan Marks just said, Deputy Secretary Marks just said, these ballots look different, and so that's an explanation, it's not an excuse. Every voter, every employee, whether they're in the mailroom or somewhere else, needs to be trained that those don't get opened and what to look for. So we're going to make sure that everybody is trained. They're going to have to make sure that if they get additional seasonal employees, that they train them as they come in to be much, much more conscious of what the different ways that these ballots might look. So that's key. That's the whole ballgame right there, is making sure that every employee, from what I can tell, and again, as you said, the investigation is still going on, but from the initial reports we've been given, this was a bad error. This was not intentional fraud. So training. And Deputy Secretary Marks, I don't know if you have anything that you want to add to that.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Just had to unmute again. I don't think I have a whole lot to add. It is really making sure that everyone who opens the mail is trained, and that they're working with election staff. Again, the investigation is ongoing. There may be additional facts that come out of that investigation, but based on the initial impression, it seems like that individual did not consult with county election staff, and if that person had consulted with county election staff, I'm sure they would have determined that these were official balloting materials and taken the appropriate steps. As I understand it, when they do open mail and discover that there are official balloting materials in there, even if they haven't been marked so on the outside, they immediately seal them in an envelope and they secure them with all of the other ballots that are coming in. So they have the appropriate protocol in place once someone discovers that there are balloting materials. It's making sure that everyone who handles the mail knows that. And if they have questions, they have to consult with county election staff before they make a decision on their own.
Okay, and one last question, if I can. Will those votes be counted now? Can they be counted?
Andy, we really have to hold people to one question. I'm sorry, but we have quite a few here that we're not going to get to. So I'm going to go ahead and call on Emily Previty from WITF, and then after that, Jan Murphy from Penn Live. One question, please, Emily. And you should be unmuted.
Hi, Secretary. Thanks for doing this. Can you detail the rules and requirements for poll watching and the process for getting a poll watching certificate?
So I think, I don't know, John, maybe this would be a better question for Deputy Secretary Marks. And I think I should say some of this is in litigation. But Jonathan, why don't you give an overview, if you would, about the process
Sure. Generally, as Secretary mentioned, some of this is in litigation, but generally the process is candidates and political parties are entitled to appoint watchers who can serve in their polling place where they reside. And when they're not serving there, they can serve in other polling places throughout the county. And that process requires credentials from the counties. The election code doesn't necessarily define what the credentials look like, but in most counties, when a candidate or a political party submits a request, they'll submit a list of names of individuals they want to have watcher certificates, and the county will issue some formal certificate to each watcher that contains their name. Usually it'll be on official county letterhead, or might even contain the seal of the county, signed by the County Board of Elections, and that's the credential then that the poll watcher can take into a polling place, and poll workers are trained to identify it and know what it is, and provide the poll watcher with the access they're entitled to under the election code.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now we will go to Jan Murphy with Penn Live. Next up will be Mark Scolforo from the AP. We will have one more question after Mark Scolforo. Jan should be unmuted right about now. Jan?
Hi there. Hi, Secretary and Jonathan. I was just wondering if you could just offer some thoughts about, we still have this idea of out there about doing some more election reform legislation. And at this point in the game, what is it that you would hope that they would do, and what is it that you hope that they don't do?
Excellent question. Thanks, Jan. You will not be surprised to hear that the thing that we hope more than anything else is that they pass a law allowing counties to start pre-canvassing the ballots before 7 a.m. on election day. This is such an obvious win for voters, for candidates, for the state, for the nation, to make sure that counties can process. We're going to have, we could have 10 times as many mail ballots. Maybe it's not going to be quite that high, but we could have 10 times as many mail ballots as we've had in past presidential general elections. And so it's common sense to allow the counties to start pre-canvassing earlier, and it will allow for a prompt counting of and reporting of the vote. That might, it should be completely non-controversial. Then it's just a matter of figuring out how many days or weeks. Second top priority would be allowing counties more flexibility with filling poll worker vacancies. Again, totally non-controversial. And both of these things, the counties, every single county supports, Department of State supports, every human being I know supports. So all we need is the legislature to act. Allowing counties to use poll workers, anybody who lives in a county, to put them in any precinct in the county, so that you don't end up with 100 volunteers in one district and 2 volunteers in another district, and your hands are tied. And let them start filling those vacancies now. Let them fill them year round, or at least 60 days before election day. So I'd love to see those two things happen. They both can still happen. They need to happen like this week. So many things that I hope they don't do that I'm not really sure we have the time to answer that. But I think there's a lot of, for example, in that one bill that is out there, there's a lot of provisions that are contrary to what this Pennsylvania Supreme Court just decided. It included restrictions on drop boxes and restrictions on the ability for Pennsylvanians to have access to the vote. I don't want to do anything that restricts access to the vote. So right now, I think we should get rid of all the disputed things and focus on the two non-controversial things, which are allowing counties to start processing those ballots earlier and helping them place poll workers.
Thank you, Secretary. We are a little over time, but we're going to go ahead with Mark Scolforo from AP, and then we will have one final question from Manny Smith with CBS 3. Go ahead, Mark.
Hello, Secretary. I hope you can hear me. Are you hearing anything about whether presidential campaigns or major political parties have been contacting county officials in an attempt to influence how ballots are counted, such as offering quote-unquote guidance for election officials or sending letters with legal threats or aggressive intervention?
Did you say campaign? Is that what you asked about? Whether a campaign has done that?
Or major political parties?
I have not heard it in quite the way you described, but I am aware of some party representatives reaching out to counties about these related issues. But I don't know that I've heard about it in sort of a broad way, as it sounds like you're asking.
Well, tell me, what have you heard? What are they doing?
I have heard about some party representatives reaching out to some county officials, making some allegations about rights that they may that they think they have that are not necessarily agreed to by the parties who receive the letters. So we're tracking it, we're monitoring it. Right now, it's limited. What I've heard is limited.
Okay, thank you, Secretary. We're going to go with Manny Smith from ABC. I'm sorry, so sorry, CBS 3, and then anyone who has additional questions after them, as always, you're welcome to send them to me. Manny, go ahead.
Thank you, Secretary. Thanks for taking some time for us today. I know you talked a lot about Philadelphia being complimentary of their efforts to open the satellite centers. We understand that's the largest ever deployment of that type of thing in the state. Can you talk about what you guys have been doing on the state level to help coordinate, to help set up with them on that, and have there been similar efforts to coordinate with Bucks, Montgomery, Chester, Delaware counties around it?
So yeah, as you probably know, for county election offices, there are multiple requirements of how they're set up, and one of the first thing that needs to happen is there needs to be secure access to the voter registration system that we have, because obviously if you're processing people's voter registrations or mail-in ballot applications and so forth, you need to have access to the voter database. So our IT team is a key part of it. Our IT, and elections teams are a key part of working with the counties to make sure that those are set up appropriately, that the employees who are going to access them, if they're not already existing employees, authorized to use they become, officially designated, trained, and so forth. So we've worked with them on that, talking about, what we provide, all the equipment. So basically the terminals that are used to access those voter registration databases, accessories and printers, we provide from the Department of State at no cost to the counties, and then helping them figure out staffing levels and so forth. So kind of all those component pieces we've been a part of, and happy to work with the counties. And yes, we've worked with all 67 counties. So not all of them are planning on opening county election offices, but a lot of the counties you just mentioned, many of them are planning or have already opened several. I think Bucks County opened 2. I think Montgomery County either did or is it going to be opening. Jonathan, is it 5-ish or 4? Somewhere in the range of 5.
Am I unmuted?
Yeah.
Yes, I believe it is. I believe it's about 5.
Okay.
5
and
or
I think,
6.
and Chester and Delaware, I think, are both planning to open some as well, or have?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yes, so but again, so are many other counties throughout the state, and we work with every one of them that has such plans.